The BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast is proudly brought to you by
Grit Farm Fitness. Here we discuss all things obstacle course racing related, as well as
endurance, conditioning, running, rucking, and much more.
Welcome to the BeastNet Canadian Edition.
Okay, so today on Beast International Canada Edition A, we happen to have Tom Petryshen and Allison Tai with us on the show. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
So maybe we'll start with, if you guys could introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Tom. I was thinking John from Allison, throwing it. You know, everyone calls me Rick for some reason, so I don't know how that comes from. They stick my last name and first name together and call me Rick. So, Tom, let's start with you, shall we?
As someone who's actually done that, yeah, okay. I do apologize for that. I'm Tom Petryshen.
You that too?
At least one of the people who've done it. Tom Petryshen, president of Obstaclesports Canada. I've been in the sport now for, I think, going on almost 12 years. Started in Australia with a small obstacle race there called the Top Bloke Challenge, which I did back in 2008, and just kind of fell in love with the concept of what obstacle sport racing could be at that early stage. That was before I discovered Spartan and any of the other Tough Mudders type of races out there. Living in Australia, there was only one or two of these a year at the time, so I would, seek them out, travel to them, and take part in them. And for me, it was at the time, it was just a great way to kind of get back into being an athlete again, or at least training. I was in my kind of late 30s, early 40s at the time, and just wanted to have something where I could stay active for. And obstacle course racing was kind of that thing for me. And then moving back to Canada in 2012, found that there was a much bigger opportunity here to kind of take part in the sport, and got involved and started doing, a couple of races per year. And then that turned into, I think, 15 or 16 in 1 year, a few years back. So now as a 50-plus-year-old, I'm taking more of a side kind of role within the sport as an athlete, and really trying to help build a foundation within Obstacle Sports Canada as the vehicle to build a foundation for the sport here in Canada, as well as internationally, working with World OCR and great people like Allison Tai, who's a long-term board member and our athlete development chair for Obstacle Sports Canada as well. So, as an organization, our goal is really to develop a program and a foundation for this sport to survive past where it is today, whatever that looks like moving forward. So I'll pass the baton over to Allison.
Hey, yeah. So how much do you guys want me to go into depth here?
We got an hour, so go ahead.
I got into obstacle course racing, 2011, and absolutely loved it. I did it when the Warrior Dash first came to Vancouver, and got into like Spartan races, obviously Tough Mudder from there. Met Tom somewhere along the way, and of course really respected him as an athlete. I don't know, did he mention that he went to the Olympics? Because that's kind of a big deal. But so he was
that.
Oh yeah, he was just this like super nice guy, and just he's always been such a champion of the sport and such a good athlete in terms of like, fitness and ability and all that, but just as a person, and just like his sportsmanship is just, so amazing. And so when he started this Obstacle Sports Canada, of course, I was like quite eager to get on board, just because I know that it's something that needs to happen in the sport. And I think Tom and I both, we're a little bit older now and have been around kind of since the beginning. And just both of us, I feel like, really acknowledge and really understand the sport and where it is and where it needs to go. And especially with his background, you know, as an Olympic athlete, he really, really understands, you know, all the ins and outs that it takes to get a sport like truly legitimized. And so I don't think that there could be a better person to kind of spearhead this. So I was just really enthusiastic. And I think we should all be very grateful in the OCR community that we have somebody like Tom that is just so qualified to take this role and to really put all of his time and effort and expertise into kind of guiding the next steps for our sport, because it's absolutely what needs to happen, right, to keep this sport a sport and to kind of to continue the growth and legitimacy of it. So it's really exciting times, right? As sometimes it feels like an old sport, you know, and kind of something that's been around for a while, we are so new, and we just need to kind of continue to take those next steps. And I think having somebody like Tom to do that is just incredible. And I'm super grateful. And I think that all of us here in Canada really, really should be and do what we can in terms of supporting the organization and supporting those next steps.
Awesome. So you mentioned Obstaclesports Canada, but there are offshoots of it, are there not? There's like sections for like different provinces and so forth?
So yeah, so the model here in Canada is a little bit different from other countries. You know, similar to Commonwealth countries like the UK, Australia, they tend to have a national federation for most of their sports, right? So you think of any sport here in Canada, whether it be triathlon, wrestling, where I came from, basketball, they'll have a national federation. Obstaclesports Canada is that national federation. And then within each of the provinces, there'll be provincial bodies or provincial sport organization, PSOs that we call them. And each of those will be kind of the local organizer for rallying the troops in that particular province, putting on events, really, you know, creating a framework for local athletes based on whatever specifics there are regarding that province. It might be something to do with insurance, or it might be something to do with the kind of the political environment, how money can be raised through any mechanisms that the provincial governments have in place for those particular sporting bodies, right? So in BC here, there's different ways you can get access to sport funding, grants in some case. There's casino money. There's a number of different avenues. These days, I think the government's just handing out checks to qualified sports. But in order to do that, you have to have proper governance in place in each of those. And the requirements for any new sport to be considered a official sport here in Canada and recognized by Sport Canada means you not only have to have a strong federal organization, national federation, but then you also have to have 8 provincial sporting bodies set up as well. So we've got 3 of them that are kind of, you know, at different stages, Quebec, BC, and Alberta. And there's one in Saskatchewan, a 4th, but not a lot has happened there. But each of these organizations almost need to be, you think of, they're not cookie cutter of the National Federation. They're their own body. They have their own elected officials who are all volunteers, just like we have at the national board level as well. There's no paid employees at this point. We're all volunteers. So yeah, it's really a collection of organizations that all work together to support the sport, as well as support athletes. Because at the end of the day, that's really why we're here. We're here to create a framework for athletes to grow in the sport, as well as to have protections in place through insurance or just sport safety. But really, it's about identifying and developing athletes so that you can groom them to send them to, you know, first national championships for their provinces, and then from there international competition under Canada. So that's kind of the goal and how the organizations kind of work together in most sports. And we're trying to set up that same framework here. So, you know, we're not just setting up one organization, volunteer organization. We're trying to set up 9 of them, which it's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort in recruiting people, getting them excited, and getting them to buy into the process and what's involved. You know, we've had a lot of people. You know, I think we've got 6 board members right now. I think at different times we've had up to 9. We've probably gone through least 10 people have kind of come and gone. And that's just the natural evolution of trying to start a new organization like Obstacle Sports Canada.
How long has it been around for?
It's now been around with actual board members since 2000, I think November 2018 was when we kind of got it officially organized. So we got the name, not certified, but registered. So we're not for-profit corporation. We had to do that through Corporations Canada, pay the fees, get a board in place, identify who those board members are to the Canada Corporations.
Oh no, his internet.
Oh no, his internet froze. Poor Tom.
I'm glad it's Tom and not me.
And others like,
You're back.
oh, you lost me.
Yeah, you
10
kind of,
seconds,
yeah,
maybe?
about the last 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, Tom, I was just saying that I was stoked that it was your internet, not mine, because mine's the one that's usually crapping out.
Well, I've had to move around today. My daughter's in my office today where I have the strongest connection. I'm up in her room at this point, so it's trading places, but hopefully it'll stay solid moving forward. I was just saying that, I was able to kind of get to the point where we had, a little bit of critical mass with a few people involved, and then I was able to rope in the wonderful Allison Tai, based on, telling her about all the hard work that would be involved in getting this organization off the ground, because it's a ton of work, and there's no easy way to go about this to make it happen. It's just grunt work at the end of the day. And funny enough, I think as obstacle sport racers, we're kind of used to that grunt work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you mentioned bringing Allison in. Allison, what do you do as part of the organization?
Anything Tom wants me to do. No. Well, as you
So now
mentioned,
it comes out.
Mhm.
You're the
oh, I mean, yeah, it is. There is so much involved. I think that probably I was a bit naive, as most people probably would be, just in terms of the amount, of paper, the amount of balls in the air, the amount of paperwork, the amount of administrative stuff. As Tom said, just a lot of grunt work. So yeah, I'm in the athlete development area. So, just trying to figure out the best ways to kind of like systematize athlete development, because you're going to see a lot of different athletes coming into the sport. You need to kind of generalize a way to train them and to have those things kind of like systemically laid out, and to be inclusive of all sorts of people that we might be able to have out in our sport. Of course, especially I think for obstacle course racing, it's just such a rich part of who we are and what we do is just to be very open, and be able to have these adaptations for different people's abilities and things like that. So there's a lot of that goes in, but I'm definitely on more the athlete development side, just having coached for, since 2011 now, obstacle course racing. I feel like that's probably my greatest contribution, but it's definitely interesting, and there's just a lot of paperwork and administration. It's a lot of work. So I have to really commend Tom on just being able to kind of keep all of those ducks in a line, and just kind of keep us all on track, and just be so organized in terms of all that stuff that has to happen, because it is a heck of a lot of work and a heck of a lot of organization and stuff like that. So
cool.
Yeah.
Tom, I believe you mentioned something about membership. So can you explain a little bit more about the membership and like how athletes, like calling us athletes?
I know, right?
Athletes like
You are.
And
we
couch
are.
ultras, I'm good.
There you go. Couch surfing athletes? No, we're getting out there.
Yeah.
But athletes like us, why would we want to reach out to the OSC? And are there costs involved? And what do we get for it?
Yeah. So as a not-for-profit, one of the requirements within Sport Canada is you have to be member-driven. So for that to happen, you've got to have a membership-based system in place. And generally, most of that revenue that you raise, especially in your first few years, needs to come from those members to show that you have, support within the community within your sport. So, we do have a membership fee. It's pretty minimal these days at $30. Generally at this point, the membership is there to show support for the organization. So you're really contributing to the growth of the organization. But moving forward, the value that we provide today is through any types of race discounts that we can get, any type of partnerships that we can bring to the fold. But moving forward, it will also include insurance. Right now, when you go to a race, you're covered by the race corporation, the company running the race, so their insurance. So you're covered while you're at their event. Once you leave, you're on your own. And I've experienced that myself, having been injured in a race where as soon as I left, my leg kind of ballooned up. My leg got infected, and I was out of work for 3 weeks, basically sitting on the sofa for a good period of that, in and out of the hospital for injections, and just trying to get that looked after. Now, fortunately, I worked for myself most of the time, so it wasn't a big issue. But for some people, that would mean missing work and expenses. So we want to have an insurance policy in place where any members will have access to that insurance if needed post-race. Any other types of partnerships. In a lot of sporting organizations, they need to basically provide a rubber stamp to any organization that wants to hold a particular race and have it be certified under that national sporting body. And we want to do the same here. That's not to say that we're going to be certifying Spartan races or Tough Mudders, but if there's going to be a provincial championship, if there's going to be a national championship, members, those who race in it, will need to be members. Just as today, if you're going to do any type of group workout with a certified athletics trainer, you generally need to be a member of your provincial body for athletics and pay a small fee. So our membership today is really to show support for the organization and what we're trying to do and build. But moving forward, it'll have a lot more value, whether it be insurance, whether it be other types of partnerships and events that we can host for those athletes moving forward.
So unfortunately, as everyone knows, we're in a global pandemic with COVID, with everything basically being canceled this year. Like you were mentioning off air before we started that you want to use this to give back to the community. How can we go about doing that safely though? Because I know we want to support each other, but at the same time, restrictions, right? So.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. We can't obviously get together in large groups like we're used to. So, look, I kind of, I had an epiphany about 2 months ago. I was just sitting around and feeling sorry for ourselves. We had finally built some momentum this year and organized our first national championships for Montreal. And unfortunately, shortly after we announced that, the pandemic hit, and it was just pretty evident at that point that it wasn't going to happen. And then we made that decision about 2 months later. It became evident to me that nothing's going to happen this year, and we can either just sit around and do nothing and just have take it off as a huge write-off for the summer, or we can actually use this time to engage the community, do things that kind of keep people invigorated, hopefully still training and positive, having a positive attitude. So we just looked at, well, what can we do with the environment that we're dealing with, right? The deck of cards that we have in front of us. And a few things came to mind right away. One is doing some interviews with race leaders, organizations, trying to find out what they were thinking and how they were kind of dealing with the pandemic. And then beyond that, it was, okay, well, we can't get together. We're not going to have a national championship, but what can we do to kind of get people excited and talking about the sport a little bit? So we held a couple of showdowns between both a group of male athletes as well as female athletes, and raise some money for charity as well. So that's another way that we've decided to kind of engage the community and just create some positive vibes about what's happening and how we're all dealing with it. And it's not necessarily the money raised didn't go to Obstacle Sports. It went to charities that are obviously in need at this time themselves. So we just wanted to do something to give back. One other thing we're working on is a kind of a virtual race similar but different from the virus race that Matt B. Davis puts on out of the US. So it's a 3-hour event, 5-kilometer loops with 10 burpees every kilometer. That's originally scheduled for the 25th of July, but I'll probably move that back down to August just due to some time constraints on my side. but it's things like that. So it's, it's creating content. It's just really trying to ensure that we're having a conversation with the community with the whole goal of, giving back, but as well as setting ourselves up for 2021. Because we want to take whatever momentum we can build and good faith that we can build with our community into next year. And you asked me earlier, about membership, and for any person who's been a member from whether they signed up in late 2018, early 2019, they're still a member. We haven't gone back and said please renew. Part of it is just because we haven't been able to kind of take that next step and get the organization to a point where we're providing more value for those funds. Anytime you ask people for money, you're asking them to contribute and trust you that you're going to do the right thing with it. And it's hard for us as an organization to say here, you need to renew again if you're going to be a member, when we haven't really hit the goals that we were hoping to as quickly as we wanted to, because this process, as Allison said, it's a lot of hard work and takes a lot longer than anyone ever expects.
Well, and it's good to see the organization still wanting to support the community and do virtual things. As I'm sure everyone knows, everything has gone virtual. There's even like a world's toughest model that's virtual now. And so I know I've been doing a lot of those races just to keep motivation, to keep going. And I don't know, in this time and place, like the motivation, I think a lot of people is kind of wavering because they're worried about taking care of their family, but they still want to get out there, get money, get dirty. I'll be walking and I'll just randomly jump in mud puddles. I miss the mud so bad. Like seriously. Allison's got me still training, but I'm like, oh, I want mud.
There's too much concrete around.
Yeah, way too much. And there's like the local race, that summer CMTR, where it's like go out and do random challenges. Just fun stuff like that. I think people are looking for to get a break from what's going on mentally as well. Because I know a lot of people that's mental health stuff too. So
yeah, and that's in the back of our mind as well, as we're kind of developing these programs ourselves. We're part of the World OCR Federation, so they put out a World Series as well. They're into their third. I haven't seen the program for the third race, but I had some. I took part in the development of the second race, which happened last month, along with Lindsay Webster and a number of other athletes. So that was kind of interesting and fun to put together. And there's a number of people now across the country taking part in that. And out there competing against not only themselves, but other athletes across the world. So, the more we can do to kind of, get these programs out there and just give people another avenue to, whether it be to train hard and compete if they want to, or just, be out there and be active is going to benefit the sport and people's well-being.
So Allison, we'll do the commercial break in a second.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yes, okay. So you're working with the athletes. Are you thinking of maybe possibly trying to fit mentoring in on that as well? Like the athletes in the association, or what is your take on that? Because I know that you provide so much support to everybody training now. So I'm just wondering if that's going to be an available option down the road for newer athletes that come in.
Sorry. So that was,
Mentoring.
am I planning on doing any mentoring? Was that the word?
Because you were saying that you're working with the athletes, getting programming, making it kind of available across the board. Would you consider doing mentoring like for new OCR athletes down the road as part of the association there?
Yeah, I mean, Tom really has to lead on that one. But I suppose, in terms of what I think we end up doing is that, at least on the onset, there's a bunch of different sports that have gone through a very similar, requirements in terms of laying everything down and trying to build that framework. So we're kind of working within that framework to be like, okay, so this is, how one should train for an obstacle course race. These are the things that are involved. These are the injury things that you need to, be aware of that are specific to the sport. So we're kind of laying down all those generalizations at this point. I mean, I feel like there's probably room for that within the membership framework or something, if you wanted to create a bit of a mentorship program or a group or something like that. There's kind of always room for that stuff. So that's kind of something that, Tom and the rest of the board could possibly look at. I know there's just so many good ideas that are up in the air just amongst the board members and stuff at the current time. But that's a really interesting idea, and I think one that could work really well, just in terms of new people coming to the sport are just like, oh my goodness, and there's not always an OCR gym or an OCR program. People don't always know people that are doing it. So it can be really hard to break into the sport because it's not like tennis where you can just go take tennis lessons at the local Y kind of thing, right? So I think that's a good point in terms of that being a really important piece, just to look at some sort of a mentorship for like total newbies, right? And something that you do see in a lot of other sports. But yeah, I've mostly been doing just like the basic framework and laying that stuff out now. But I think as we develop those, the programs and making sure that all of the documents and whatnot are in place, that's when we get to do kind of the more fun stuff and the more projects that expand on the membership benefits. So that would probably fall into that, I imagine, but I'm sure Tom could, throw in his 2 cents, and it's going to be a lot more valuable than mine.
Not at all.
All the brains.
I will add to, so as an organization, we have actually put out some programs in the last couple of years just to test the waters to see what type of feedback we get. And the goal is to be able to have these in place as the organization matures and we have more people on board. We have funds to actually run these programs. With any organization, it's a chicken and egg thing. You can't just rely on volunteer sweat and tears to run camps, as an example, or go out there and explain what the sport is all about to new organizations or to fitness areas, centers, that type of thing, right? It takes effort, it takes people, and in a lot of cases it takes money. So, but we have experimented in that area. So a couple of things we've done, we've had camps in both Quebec and BC. And those can help in a number of ways. One is they kind of help bring new people, they introduce people to the sport. They can help train existing athletes and improve their skill sets. But also too, you're out there promoting your organization to the masses. And so you might find a few new people who haven't tried it before and are able to kind of introduce them to the concept of what obstacle course racing is all about in the sport. The second thing is, and this is something Allison and John have actually been doing within their own business, is going out there and creating a product for schools. So really trying to create a way for schools to implement obstacle sports into their curriculum. And that's no easy task, right? So a lot of documentation, they require insurance, they require, everything has to be articulated and specified up front before you can go in and start working with student athletes these days, or students, because there's so much competition, there's so many requirements from an insurance standpoint. And John and Allison have actually done an excellent job of actually putting together and testing out this new kind of framework for doing that within schools here in BC that we'd love to be able to kind of build upon and take nationally. So introduce it to other provincial sporting bodies, as well as take it national so that there's a program in place. But once again, it's kind of a, you kind of need some momentum, you need some funds in order to do that. But you need to have it at a certain level where people will buy into it. Not just the school administrators, but the students love it already, but it's you need the school administrators buying, but you need support from other areas as well, volunteers. It all kind of has to come together in order to gel, in order to get that product out there. But that's one that, I can think of where John and Allison have done a wonderful job of actually creating and serving a need in the community. And hopefully we can build upon that as the organization matures.
Yeah,
and we're lucky to have a sport that is just so attractive to kids in particular and beginners, because it's just fun. And, a lot of these movements and a lot of playing in the mud and stuff like that is something that we, enjoy doing as kids. So there is that, right? That it's a very easy sport to get out there to new people and to kids especially. And yeah, Tom also did a bunch of videos, I think. It's pretty neat, actually, the course that we did, the camp that we did, there's like lasting OCR friendship still from that. So it was a pretty cool weekend to be a part of. And it's just pretty neat to see that it still has an impact on the community, and the people that were at that camp still talk and support one another and send each other workouts, and it's pretty neat. But yeah, that video series too would be maybe not a direct mentorship program, but it's definitely somewhere that people can go to get reliable information. I don't know if that's where you direct people as well, Tom, but something I was thinking while you were talking.
Yeah, it's we'd like to do more of that, but it all comes down to time and the volunteers that you're working with, right? So people have to want to do it. That's a critical component to it, and have the time and drive to be able to put their effort into to help get it done as well. So lots to do, a lot more that we want to do. This year, considering the pandemic and everything we're kind of dealing with, I think we're doing a good job of getting out in the community in a way that's, at least allowing us to have a conversation, which is positive.
Yeah, I know too, even with that virtual race that you guys set up there, that a lot of people were just doing that on their own and realizing like, oh, hey, that's a pretty easy way to train. Even in a COVID situation, this is something that we can just go and do out on our own. So I know a lot of people, even though it was intended more to be, a fundraiser and something that people can really like sit and watch and engage with that way, that a lot of people that just, hadn't really put that together in their head in terms of, a way to be able to get out there and train still. So it kind of inspired them to go out and do their own similar workouts. So yeah, pretty neat. But the more support I think that Obstacle Sports Canada gets is the more this stuff is out there, and there's definitely a need for it. So it's just more about getting that support and that momentum and getting more people involved and supporting the cause. And then these are kind of initiatives that we can all tackle together as part of people that just love the sport and want to see it continue to grow. So
we're going to take a quick break. For those listening on the podcast, I guess more than anything, a little commercial sponsor break, right? So we'll be right back.
Do you like destination racing?
Are you looking for an endurance event where you can camp under the stars and be surrounded by nature and be with your friends?
Perhaps staying in an on-site cozy B&B is more your style.
Well, look no further.
Grip Farm Fitness has it all and more.
Located just 2 hours northeast of Vancouver in the beautiful Fraser Valley.
Participate in one of their events or just come out for hiking, horses, or much more.
Book any activity your heart desires at www.grit-farm.com.
That's www.grit-farm.com for our Canadian listeners, eh?
So we've been talking about virtual races and even like actual races that may still be happening. And I was wondering if either of you guys are going to be doing any of the virtual races that are out there anytime soon. Have you guys signed up for anything, or are you guys just working on this, or what are you guys doing?
Well, let Allison go.
Okay. So some of you know, we bought this 100-acre farm in the Fraser Valley. And so we've been, cutting trails and building and all this. So just very, very busy. So I haven't really been focused on racing at all. So much as I have been just, maintaining some fitness and just having fun with other things in life. So racing really hasn't been on my radar. I did sign up. So I have, we bought a pony for my daughter that turned out to be not a good kid's horse. But he is from this, what they do endurance racing on horses. So people do these, it's very much like, it's actually where ultra marathons came from, is the Western States Ultra was originally a horse race, for those of you who don't know that. And then some guy, oh, you didn't know? Okay, so it was originally a horse race, a 100-mile horse race, and this one guy, his horse went lame, and he was like, that's fine, I'll just run it. And people were like, are you insane? Like, why would you do that? And he was like, I'm fine, I'll just run it. And he had been doing like runs and stuff, so it's not like he had never run in his life. But he actually came in pretty well. And then eventually they realized that a person on foot could actually beat a person on a horse, because the horses have to slow down and, they need vet checks, and you need to care about them, and people less so they can just run themselves right into the ground. So we have this horse, and his parents, his horse parents, were very good at endurance racing. He's an Arab horse, so they're kind of built for it. And he'd see me go out in my like running kit, and he'd start running up and down the fence line being like, take me with you. So I started just running with him. And it's an interesting experience. It's kind of like just having a 800-pound dog that runs beside you, but he loves it. So we signed up for this virtual race that's 1,900 miles, but you do have 7 years to finish it. I'm hoping it doesn't take me 7 years.
7
But
years?
Goodness.
yeah, so we're
That's
working
a
on
long
some-
race.
I know, right? Like I signed up for it and I'm like, I don't even want to do the math. I'll just keep adding up my mileage. But so I signed up for it just in the like thought that by the time we get to 1,900 miles, because we're working on he tends to do this thing where he like launches you off in a rodeo style bucking thing and then tries to jump on you and squish you. So, so we're trying to get over that. And I think a lot of it is just like relationship building. So I'm like, by the time we get to 1,900 miles, that should be a thing of the past. So that's the only thing that I've signed up is just to travel 1,900 miles with this failed kids pony. Who really likes running. So he's my new running partner. And we're going to hopefully make it 1,900 miles before my 40th birthday. We'll see if that happens. And that's really all I'm signed up right now. I know like it's funny because I look at the virtual races and I'm like, but then it's like, there's this one that's 100 miles. And it's actually free. It's called the COVID Derby, and it's 1,000 miles in August. So you can do it on a team. You can cycle, you can run, and it's free. And I now like just totally promoting this, but I'm like, that's pretty cool. And if you want to buckle, then you pay. So, you can do it as a team. You can do it on horses. You can do it on roller skates or kayaks or whatever. But so that's something I'm looking at, but I think probably as a team effort because 250 kilometers is kind of hard to fit in a week, right? So yeah, but there's so much cool stuff out there, and it works well for me because I can't do a lot of traveling right now, obviously with the farm and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to see all these different ways that people are taking it in terms of extreme endurance events, and then like these the high rock stuff where it's you can get that short explosive stuff in. So I think there's just kind of something for everybody, and it's a really good time just to try to experiment with different things. Like maybe you're not an endurance athlete and you want to try, maybe a higher mileage month, and maybe you're an endurance athlete and you're like, hey, I wonder how I do at these more explosive workouts and things. So it's pretty neat to be able to kind of stack up with people across the world, really, right? And again, it's a weird thing because I have a lot of like clients in Florida who are like, oh my God, it was like 119 degrees or whatever today. And I had to do this race against somebody who's in like Portland and it's like 80 something, right? So, but yeah, half the time in Portland, it's like pouring rain. Like I think the virus one of my clients who's on the West Coast, it was pouring all day and, everybody else is dry conditions. So there's some funny stuff with weather conditions, but I think it just kind of adds to the, challenge and uniqueness of the virtual race world. But yeah, Tom, what are you doing?
I'm mostly running these days, just trying to keep my fitness level. I'm actually trying to slow down, which sounds really strange, I think, to a lot of people. I tend to run at a fairly high pace when I'm out there running, and part of it's just unconscious. I just have this ability to be able to kick into a gear and run at that pace, regardless of whether I'm running 5K or 15K or 21K. And as I get older, I realize that's not going to be feasible. And as I try to want to run longer distances now, as I get older, I realize that I have to slow down. So I'm trying to do that as much as possible. And, I'm running with a gentleman an old friend of mine who runs at a 6-minute kilometer pace. So I do that once every 3 weeks with him, and we go out for a nice casual run. But it's good for me because we kind of run a 5.5 minute pace, which my normal is probably around 4. So it's a good way for me to kind of slow down and just take a bit of a breath and enjoy the running a little bit more. So I'm doing that. But as far as virtual races go, I've done the first 2 in the series of the World OCR Series 5 races, which were, quite challenging considering I haven't been doing a lot of heavy lifting or, even hanging on bars or anything that I would do in a typical training season to stay fit for obstacle courses. So they've been a really good challenge of and test of my fitness. So I've been doing those, and there should be another one out for July, and then 3 more for the full series of 6. And within those races, you're competing against other people from around the world, which is kind of cool. So I've out there against a gentleman from the UK that I've known from competing against at the OCRWCs in the past couple of years, right? So we've kind of rekindled the friendship a little bit out there and started talking through Messenger a bit. But I'm doing that, and then I'm just going to continue working on my longer runs. Hopefully get out into the trails a little bit more moving forward. And if there's any kind of virtual runs that involve trails, I'll probably sign up for those in the next month or two.
Cool. Very cool. Allie, you have this farm that you have done a couple races on, like smaller races. You are doing some stuff potentially still coming up as well as the virtual stuff, or do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Well, so we have this weekend, I guess, like next weekend, the 18th of July. Let's go with that since we're in podcast land. So we have a bunch of like cabins basically on our property. And so we're having a bunch of different bubbles, social bubbles. So we have, like 2 friends that their families are now in like that new bubble situation that people are doing. And so they're going to stay in one cabin, and we have, different fields with different cabins. And then we're going to do what's going to amount to either basically a 20K or a 50K race that's kind of looped through the forest here. And so mostly on really wide trails that it's really easy to pass on. And then the route is going to go through where the cabins are, because there's every time you come in from a different loop, and so there's going to be 5 10K loops, and each are slightly different, but they all pass around the cabins. So people could just stop because we can't have aid stations or anything like that. So my husband's really good. He works in the hospital, so he's like really up on, the current stuff in terms of how to keep people safe, and socially distanced is not a issue for us over here. So we got 100 acres of space. So yeah, we're going to do that just to kind of get people out and, socially together and physically distant is pretty easy, and just kind of get that going and see how it works. But so it'll just be really small and just a bunch of friends. So I'm kind of excited for that, just to have people out and, running on trails and exploring the area and just having a good weekend. We're going to have like a yoga class on the lawn the Friday, and then the race on Saturday with the loops. And then Sunday, we're just going to do a little workout. We do a workout here just at the farm every week, just body weight stuff. And we just, put mats along in the field. And so we'll do that. And then maybe do like a little trip down to this place that they call Hell's Gate, where they have like a tram and stuff in the morning. So yeah, it should be fun. Small, but fun.
Yeah, well, it is small, but is it open for others? Do you want to tell people how to find out more about it and any others that might be coming up?
I mean, it's obviously going to be difficult being in Canada here, but if anybody wants, then you can just find me on social. We do have to be like really careful about it. So obviously get a hold of me as fast as you can if that's something that you want to do, and I'll see if we can accommodate you. But yeah, we have to like really like plan everything out to make sure that everything is being adhered to in terms of space and whatnot. So, but if you want to do, if that's something that you'd be interested in, even in the future, we have a couple more. And if you sign up and connect with me sooner than later, then I can make sure that you guys have your own like safe spot where people aren't interacting with people from outside their bubbles. So it's funny because the rules are always changing, right? And there's always, especially with this current situation, there's just always all these, problems to solve, and it's like putting together a puzzle sometimes. But I think we have a good opportunity here just to kind of connect smaller groups of people for the kind of things that people really miss, which is just being out in nature and the fitness and that camaraderie of being out with other people. So we're able to offer that on a really small scale, which I think is kind of unique to who we are and where we live.
Awesome. Tom, can you tell us a bit more on where people can find out more about the OSC and any of the other factions that might be out there?
Yeah, sure. So you can find us on the web at Obstaclesports.ca. There's also the Obstacle Sports of BC Association as well, Association of British Columbia. They've got their own website as well. We're on Facebook under Obstacle Sports, Instagram as well. So yeah, through any one of those sources, you can find out. You can always reach out to myself, Allison, or any of the other board members who are listed on the website as well. strike up a conversation, ask how you can get involved. We're, at this point, really looking for people to volunteer and get involved. And, you have to be a bit of a self-starter because we're all, outside of doing this, we're also working regular jobs and trying to, keep our own families safe. So we're really looking for people who want to put the time and effort into to do whatever is needed in the short term, but also hopefully fill a position moving forward as we start to develop more products within the organization. Our goal for 2021 is to hold the first national championships for obstacle course racing. It'll probably be in Montreal in July of next year if everything's allowed to move forward in more of a normal sense. And that will become hopefully the first of other race products that we can actually help put out there to the community to get excited about and to, measure ourselves against others across this great country that we live in. So by all means, visit us on the web, Facebook, or reach out personally.
You'd mentioned that you had like camps and stuff. Are you, or is the organization thinking of trying to put on their own races and or even like you'd mentioned, I think possibly like a virtual race or like?
Yeah, well, in the short term, we're trying to do our own virtual races because you don't need a venue. You don't need all the resources that typically go into putting on an obstacle course race, right? Hundreds of volunteers, all the equipment. So we're trying to do that in a virtual right now to engage the community. But moving forward, we don't see ourselves as a replacement to Spartan races or Mud Heroes or X-Warrior Challenges or just any race that Northman Race and the Just Run group put on. We're really there as partners. So our long-term goal is to be able to work with these different race organizations to put on events, whether that be a national championship or whether it be a provincial championship. I don't see any of this in the short term. I don't see any of the sporting bodies, whether provincial or not at a national level, being able to hold races because there's just too much that goes into it. And we're not the experts when it comes to putting on a great race. There's a lot of logistics involved that you really need somebody who's done it multiple times in order to put on a great event. So we just want to partner with those existing race organizations like the Just One group and the Northman Race like we were planning to do this year for the national championships, and really kind of piggyback off what they're doing. Have our own race, but it's on a separate day using some of their same infrastructure that they already have in place for one of their own races, and just trying to leverage that so that we can still put on a great event that's unique to Obstacle Sports Canada and brand it as a national championship. But, we're using the expertise and the resources of a group and people like Marco Bedard, who just have, a ton of experience of putting on great events that we can't do ourselves, right? So the only way to go from 0 to 100 is to partner. And we recognize that. And that's probably how we'll do most of our live events moving forward. I don't see us putting on our own events just because of all the costs and equipment and everything else that goes into it.
But you will be, like you said, you'll be partnering with. So that's a good thing too. So, maybe even helping them, get it out there or whatever, right? So that'll be good.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? So we've got to be there as kind of that voice for the community, but also promoting the race organizations that are out there and, showing our support. Because at the end of the day, it's got to be a relationship, a partnership between all the race organizers and what we're trying to do. We can't do it alone for many reasons, but, I think like yourselves, you've been out to many of these different races over the years, right? And you've all benefited from having these organizations out there. So we want to show our support to kind of continue them. There's been consolidation in the marketplace already. There's been race organizations go bust. So, we want to see more survive as much as possible, right? So for us, if we can partner and be a stronger voice together, it's going to benefit the community as a whole, as opposed to everyone trying to do their own thing.
It's something that I've seen recently, being an ambassador for like Spartan and for Tough Mudder, and just loving obstacle course racing so much that I try and involve myself in like most of the people's like how they try and get the races out and try and get them there. and like talking to all these people, especially for Canada, they're like, why are our numbers so much lower than they are in the States, for instance, and like you mentioned, like there's races that are going bust, and some of those were Canadian owned, some of them are even American owned, but when they try and come over to Canada, they never come back because
logistic issues,
it's
obstacles over the border.
There's a lot involved. So I really think that your organization can hopefully help with that and just help mitigate that and get more races over here when we can. It's gonna be a lot of virtual stuff right now, but I think you guys are working on a lot of other stuff that are not just race centric, right? So you're trying to also help athletes and so forth. And maybe you're going to have to kind of go to that more virtual race type setup where, all right, we're going to help you, train, or we're going to just help support you for these races, and these are the ones that we like or whatever, or that we sanction, or it may just be that way for the next year or two until we can get back into. I hate saying it could happen that long, but you never know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we just got to kind of change with the times, and I think you guys are definitely set up to be able to do that. So.
Well, thanks. It's as Allison alluded to, it's a lot of hard work. No one gets to do this for making themselves look great at the end of the day, because it's just so much work. And I've questioned myself a couple of times already, more than a couple of times. Why am I doing this? But I'm in so deep. It's my other kind of problem that I have with myself is I hate quitting. I'm not a quitter. I just I will lie awake for days on end if I ever quit anything. So for me, it's about seeing this through as far as I can get it. Eventually it'll come to a time where, someone else will need to take the lead to take it to the next level. And I recognize that. But part of that is getting it to a state where it can move forward and hopefully have the right structure in place so that it's never taken over by somebody who wants to run it as their own business or anything like that. Right. So my goal is to continue putting time and effort into it, to hopefully coddle it and, get more people like Allison on board who can help support it and really create that strong foundation. So at this point, I'm in too deep. I can't give up. And I know I've got a couple more.
You want to.
Yeah.
Nor do you want to.
I don't want to at this
point. It's not just because you're in too deep. Like I've known you for a while, and you're a lot like me as well. Like you just want to give back to the community. You want to help, and yeah, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, but at the same time, I can tell if it wasn't something that drove you, it wouldn't still continue, especially during these times, because right now is a perfect time to be like, no, we're done, but you're not doing that. So, kudos to you, and just, hopefully others will hear this and, want to reach out and see what they can do to help support as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We're all in this together, right? So
definitely. And it's great that, I've been able to build friendships with people like Allison and yourselves, right? So it's one of those things that you never think about going into anything new, is, what your life is going to be like 5-10 years later. And a lot of that comes from the relationships and friendships that you built from those early days, or even the new ones that you get to form as the organization grows. So it's one of the positives that I try not to lose sight of as I'm putting the time and effort into it, because it is, it's what allows us to grow at the end of the day and become better people. So for me, it's really, it's one of those things that you just don't recognize until much later. And I'm grateful to have the friendships that I've made through this sport. And now, as an athlete initially, but now as a builder, trying to create something out of nothing from a governance standpoint. There's you really get to see people for who they are when you're working closely with them. So it's been a big plus, and I look forward to kind of doing more of that moving forward.
Awesome. Do you have anything else?
No, I think we're good for now.
So I guess we're pretty much at the end of our show, but I'd like to get anything that you guys want to bring up or talk about at the end, before you go. Is there anything you guys want to, bring up? I think we pretty much.
I just think at the end of the day, if you want to kind of see this thing continue as an OCR racer, I think people should just get signed up for memberships and support the cause. And, maybe if they want to take it to the next level, or if they feel like they'd be an asset, right, to the cause, just connect with Tom or myself or whoever on the board and see if you can fit in. We always need more, competent folks who love OCR and are passionate about legitimizing the sport to help and put in their time with it too. So, if that could be you, then obviously just reach out. But if not, the membership really goes a long way. So, there are a lot of benefits that come with it, but even if, without those benefits, I think it's just important to show your support and sign up and generate that additional membership so that we can kind of keep on grinding on.
I'll just add to that. One of the kind of key requirements for us as a organization is to have representation across the country, right? So, we're trying to have diversity from a provincial standpoint. We're trying to have diversity from a gender standpoint, an athlete standpoint as well. So, eventually having somebody with para Olympic skills on board as well. So that's, if you're out there and you're thinking that, you just don't have, you don't consider you have the right skills to be part of a board, I would say, reach out and talk to us, because you probably do. And you come from a different perspective than other, whether you're born in Quebec or Ontario or BC, we all have different views on how the world works. Yes, we share a lot of commonalities, and, but at the end of the day, that experience is kind of needed to help grow an organization. So as Allison mentioned, there's lots of ways to get involved, whether it's just becoming a member or just, getting involved at a volunteer level as well. We need that representation across the country in order to be a strong body moving forward, and to have that, status, recognition, I guess, from Sport Canada as an official sport. So it's going to be part of it. It's going to be a long road moving forward. This isn't going to happen in a year or two. It's going to probably be 3 to 5 years. But the more support we have, whether it's as a volunteer on the board or in some other capacity or just as a member, is beneficial.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, and thanks for doing this, guys.
Sure.
Great that Rick and Charity. Just kidding, Ryan. That you guys are out there, you're doing your own thing, supporting the community as well. So these are great ways to kind of bring people together and have a conversation. And, it takes facilitators like yourselves in order to do that. And, thank you for being such great, wonderful hosts.
Yeah, definitely.
Rick Fick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you should change your name. I like Rick Fick. I didn't know you got called Rick, but I like it now. I might just.
Well, it's not usually in person. It's usually by email, and it's the weirdest thing. It's only really kind of happened like in the last year and a half that it's been like super consistent. Like people that I've talked to many times in email, not just you, Tom, but like people like they just reply back, "Thanks, Rick." I'm like, who's this Rick guy? Like, I don't mind, don't call me late for dinner, but like, whatever. Yeah, I'm good with that, like, we all get our like nicknames. I had Deuce when we first started doing these races. I kept stopping to go to the washroom when we were on course,
Well, Rick's better than that. I think I'd go with Rick.
So, I think so. Yes. Tom, do you still have Master Tom, or do you?
It still comes up, yes. I've got other nicknames from my wrestling days as well, but Master Tom's probably my biggest in this sport anyways. But I think it was Allison who came up with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was me, maybe it was Warren. I don't know. I definitely ran with it. It's like, that's the best name. It's so fitting.
What was one of your wrestling nicknames? You need to tell us.
Turbo. Because
I
used to... I had a problem sitting still, and in order to kind of get warm, I would have to do a lot more than some of the bigger athletes. So I was always kind of moving and just spending more time warming up and getting ready for a competition. And then also had My first one was probably called Tom Platz. And I don't know if you've heard of Tom Platz. He's a real person. But at the time in the late 80s and I think even early 90s, he was a Olympic weightlifter, bodybuilder, and had the biggest legs. And when I started wrestling, I did not have the biggest legs. So a couple of my teammates, older teammates at the time, called me Platz, Platz, and it kind of stuck. So, but it was all to make fun of the fact that I had very small legs for a wrestler. But hey, I made the most of them.
Right? As long as you're quick and slippery, you can get up. I did wrestling in high school too, so I remember those days.
A great sport that my body can't do anymore, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, guys, for joining us. And probably have one of the two of you or both of you back on the show again soon, just to see how things are coming along. So,
Sure.
Well, thank you. And Allison, great to see you again.
Yeah,
Virtually.
you too. Nice to have a chat virtually, guys. It's been too long.
For sure.
do it more often.
Mhm.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to the BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast.
Please click on subscribe, like us, and feel free to share the podcast with others.
Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify.
We'd also love to hear from you on who or what type of content you'd love to hear on the show on upcoming episodes.
The BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast is proudly brought to you by
Grit Farm Fitness.
Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at beastnetpod.com.
That's beastnetpod.com.